I really hope that road isn't too busy. Or too noisy anyway. Okay, all the books I read in April and May, because I suck at keeping everyone updated. So we're doing a couple of months in one. I've got my Goodreads up here to keep me right, but oh yeah, I read quite a few good books. Okay, so the first one I've got here is actually one that we did for my book club. I have some of the books here, not all of them. We did for my book club, and I think it is a book that all of us would have picked up separately at our own will because we really love the writer, but I don't think anyone really enjoyed it, and that was Jamaica Kincaid's Among Flowers, A Walk in the Himalayas. Well, I was really happy when I came across this book because I was like, Kincaid, nature, great, like what could be better, this sounds amazing. Was so glad that it got picked for the book club, and the introduction to the book, stunning. And then very quickly I was very disappointed, which is a shame because it has a really gorgeous cover, which I think is just basically what I kept saying during the book club. Like, great cover though. In this travel memoir, Kincaid is traveling to Nepal with her friend and another couple of seed collectors. They're going there because they're all avid gardeners and they want to collect seeds for their own gardens. This strikes me as an odd activity to do. It feels... I don't even know you're allowed to do that. Obviously all the seeds get checked when you're traveling home to make sure it's all okay, but it does feel like you're like stealing from one place and taking it back home, and I don't know, it didn't really sit right with me, and it honestly just felt like someone asked Kincaid to write this book and she was like, sure, I'll write it. Not because she like really wanted to. There were some really beautiful little snippets that you like just got this like gorgeous image of, and that was it. It was surface level, it fell flat, it didn't go anywhere, and I was really disappointed because you could see in the book that Kincaid is obviously a good writer, which we already know, but I just felt like this wasn't really going anywhere, and there were some things that just kind of like really turned me off. Like, for one, this like taking seeds from somewhere else and bringing them back home just for your garden seems odd. They had Sherpas helping them with their trek because obviously it's like this big massive undertaking and they need a guidance with where they're going and keeping safe and everything like that, and they couldn't be bothered to learn names. So there was one guy and his job was to carry the table that they would have their meals at, and so they just referred to him as Table, and that like just was so rude. Like, that's just yeah. And a lot of the time she was just kind of saying like, I don't know what this is and I don't know what that is, but then she wouldn't really tell us what it was. We were just getting her frustration, which kind of effective in a way because like it is her travel memoir. We are kind of experiencing what her experience was like in a sense, but yeah, overall it kind of fell flat for me and the rest of my book club. So oh yeah, there's actually a passage about her writing the book, and I think that when you're writing from your life, you know, memoir, personal essay, I found like this passage was just really like well put and relatable in a way. To make the experience like a book, here it is in a book I'm writing now for myself, but it is very hard to do this. For each word I put in the book is a word I have to part with. Each experience I portray in this book is one I had to part with. I have not wanted to part with anything, word or experience, I have had whilst walking around the foothills of the Himalaya in Nepal among its flowers. And so maybe the reason it fell so flat is because it's not necessarily something she like really wanted to write. It's not like she had this experience and then was like, I need to write about this. It's more like she had this experience and then someone was like, can you write about that and make it a book please? And so she did. Then I read Angela Carter's The Bloody Chamber, which is a collection of short stories. It's kind of a take on fairy tale and folk tales. It's not necessarily my cup of tea, but there were some enjoyable ones in this. I imagine my sister would love this because she is a big fan of feminist horror. Each of the stories within the book kind of explores female desire, but it's just very white and also very straight desire. But there were a few standout stories for me. So the title story, the first one, The Bloody Chamber, it's the longest in the book by far, and yeah, it's really good. And then the other ones that I enjoyed were Lady of the House of Love and Wolf Alice. So those two really stood out to me. There were some that I just wished would be over really, really quickly, like the Puss in Boots one I just was not into at all. The first story, The Bloody Chamber, is a take on the fairy tale of Bluebeard, this horrible man who kills his wives. Lady of the House of Love is about a vampire, and Wolf Alice is, as you may have guessed, about a werewolf. Not too much to say on this other than it was interesting to see fairy tales that a lot of us know really well in a different light. Her writing is very ornate, very intricate, very, very sensory. I felt like I could really envision every single story, whether I liked it or not. The writing was writing. Sorry, I'm like flying through these because I have quite a few, and otherwise this video is going to be like an hour long like last time, so we're picking up the pace. Do I have this one here? Yeah. Constellations, which I really, really like this. Clare Gleason is a writer, obviously, but she was an editor, I think, and she had pulled together Irish stories by women into compilations, and this is her first solo book, I think, and it's a bunch of essays about her life, her experience as an Irish woman, her experience as a mother, her experience as a writer, her experience in a sick body, her experience with pain, physical and emotional. There's a lot of life, love, loss, very beautifully written, a lot of, you know, growing up religious in Ireland and then coming to terms with your own meaning of life. And yeah, I thought it was really well done. I haven't really heard anybody else speak about this, so if you're someone who loves personal essays like I do, I would highly recommend this. I thought it was just like gorgeous, very vulnerable, very honest, a really good portrayal and a really honest portrayal of living life in a sick body and dealing with other aspects of life whilst also still having to deal with your own pain. Just some really lyrical, beautiful language in here too. I zipped through it really fast. I enjoyed it. Okay, next, this is possibly my favorite book that I've read all year so far. So it's between this one and another one that I read that I'll also speak about. So I read this one in April, and then in May I read another book and I was like, oh god, this one might be my favorite. But I'm so excited to share this book with you because I loved it so much. It's called Strega, and I mean, what a cover, by Johanne Lykke, and it is translated by Saskia Vogel. Also, just like, I'm obsessed with this cover. It's gorgeous. I love a hardback that isn't too big and also doesn't have a dust jacket. Like, the combination of the colors, like this kind of mossy green with this lavender, I love it so much. And just lavender end page is beautiful. So I was having like a beautiful physical experience with this book, especially because, like, I know this might seem like a tiny little thing, but I really loved it. There wasn't the chapters weren't numbered and they didn't have headings either. It was just little crescent moons the entire time, and I love that. Also, some really gorgeous type as well. So physically, aesthetically, a really, really pleasing book for me. I love books as objects as well as, you know, the thought experience I have with them. And this is, oh god, I don't even know how to explain it because it was just, it did a lot for me and it's hard to put that all into words, but I felt like I hadn't read anything that I loved this much in a long time. The language is so poetic, so hypnotic, completely mesmerizing, and for that to be a translation, like, kind of blew my mind. For it to be that to be a translated text and for it to flow and have such musicality, like that feels amazing. So we have our young protagonist Rafa, and the kind of the chorus of the book, they're all like young women, they're still girls, they're 19 years old, and they all go to this remote hotel to work for the summer. And it is very gothic. It is kind of like, it's feminine horror, like it's very sensory. It feels like everything has this like facade of being beautiful. If I had to describe this book, it would be like Parma violets and moldy stone fruit and cigarettes and your skin being sticky from sweat. That's what I got from this. And I like love all those things, great. But yeah, so they go to this hotel that's in this remote alpine town. It's very out of the way, already very gothic. This big hotel becomes a character in itself. It's like an alternate universe. Things feel different, things move differently, things are just very off inside this hotel. And you have the staff who work there, who are above them, all these older women, and they're just very stern characters. And these young girls, they drink a lot of milk or rich kind of syrupy drinks, and they share bread, and they share fruit, and they have their smoking breaks together, and they wander through this hotel, which pretty much remains empty the entire time they're there, and they're dusting and they're cleaning, and they lay out a food service, and then they take it all away because there's been no guests. And I could feel like the plushness of the carpet when they're walking down the halls. It's almost like their feet would sink into it, and like puffs of like, I don't know, like dust and spores of something would come out, because it's just such an old mouldering building. And yeah, it's like everything has this like lacquer of beauty, but if you peeled it back, everything would just be decaying underneath. And beside the hotel there is a convent, and there's nuns there, and there's kind of this, not quite a rivalry, but there's like a separation between religion and what might be going on in this hotel. And I don't want to say too much because I really had no idea where this was going to go, and I loved it. But it was very sensory, very visual, very immersive. The pacing is very hypnotic. The writing is just absolutely beautiful, and I don't think I've ever read anything quite like this, but it was like, it kind of captures the way that it's like, it's very haunting to be a girl, it's very haunting to be a woman, a young woman, and for some reason this book really captured that essence. And oh god, I loved it so much. I could not recommend this more. I think it actually really, yeah, is my favorite book of the year so far, and I think it'll be so difficult to top that. Yeah. Okay, then I read two very slim little babies that I have here. Notes on Camp by Susan Sontag and My Life Has Stood a Loaded Gun by Emily Dickinson. So Notes on Camp, in here there's two essays by Susan Sontag, very well known Notes on Camp, and then One Culture and the New Sensibility. I did prefer the second essay, but yeah, I think pretty much everyone has read Notes on Camp. And the reason I wanted to pick this up was because, one, I haven't read any Sontag, and I feel like that is to my absolute shame. But two, I read an article, and god, I can't remember who it was by, and I can't remember where I read it, but someone had taken Notes on Camp as an inspiration and had written a piece called Notes on Taste, and it was really interesting, and it was just, yeah, I wanted to see where the inspiration had come from, and I've been wanting to read Sontag for a long time, so it kind of just made sense to pick up, and I breezed through it in not very long at all. Yeah, I underlined quite a lot in here. It's good. There is taste in people, visual taste, taste in emotion, and there is taste in acts, taste in morality. Intelligence as well is really a kind of taste in ideas. Feels like a good introduction to Sontag if you haven't read any of her work. Yeah. And then My Life Is Stood a Load of Gun, again, someone that I hadn't read anything of, Emily Dickinson, and felt like I really should. I think Emily Dickinson's known for being very reserved and kind of separated from the social life that was going on around her. She was very reclusive, but she still managed to write these gorgeous pieces on like connection and like the meaning of life or her experience and things. I also noticed that she like loves an M dash, and I was like, yes, that's my kind of writer. I love an M dash, and M dash can do so much for you. Like, if you don't like M dashes, maybe you're not for me. Then Not With Me, but another book club book. So this is now at the end of April. I read this for our meeting at the start of May. Optic Nerve by Maria Gainza, which was a translated text. Was it Thomas Bunstead who translated this? Let me check. Yes, it was. So Optic Nerve is like a collection of auto-fictional essays that kind of read like short stories. The form was really interesting, but for me, when I was reading it, I kept forgetting that it was like the same women throughout the stories. I was reading them very separately, and then I would suddenly remember, and I'd be like, oh, so this happened to her, and then that, and I had to keep coming out of it to remember to kind of like link them up. It didn't feel like it flowed fully as one, but it didn't really bother me so much. So our protagonist is a woman who's an art historian and a mother and a wife, and each story is linked to an artist and a piece of art, and then there's like parallels between the work that she has chosen to kind of represent the story that she's telling, or the essay that she's telling, and the part of her life that it ties to. I wish I had the book here with me, because there was definitely a couple of favorites for me. It kind of ties together that, like, it ties together art writing and life writing in a way that I really enjoy. I know that Olivia Lang's very good at that. Their collection, Art in an Emergency, is all these essays on writers and musicians and painters and artists of various disciplines, and how their life informed their art and their art informed their life. And it's kind of like almost like a personal version of that. So she's writing about herself and the art that has influenced her life, or how she can link art to her life or her life to art. Yeah, it was enjoyable. I don't think I loved it. I loved the idea of it. It's maybe not the best iteration of that idea for me, but I did enjoy reading it. Okay, then I read, and this is a book that I've wanted to read for a while, but I didn't really think that I would, because it's sci-fi and I'm not really a sci-fi kind of gal. But I read The Dispossessed by Ursula K. Le Guin. I've never read any Le Guin before, and I feel like this was a good entry point for me. So her prose style is quite dry, but considering this is my kind of like first foray into sci-fi, I didn't really mind, because I felt like I was very much getting the lay of the land from her. The Dispossessed is a book that deals with the theme of utopia and kind of political and philosophical thoughts. So we have our protagonist Shevek, who is from a colony who live on the moon, or the planet is called Inaris, and then there's another planet called Uras, and these are the two main planets. And it kind of takes on the utopian theme in a different way. So Le Guin subverts it, because usually with the utopian story, the protagonist would leave their environment, which they feel to be not ideal, and they go to another environment which seems ideal, and they want to learn about that, or they want to create that kind of life for themselves. With this book, Inaris is supposed to be a kind of utopia, and Uras is kind of the renounced place that was bad, that the colony kind of rejected. So the book opens about 200 years after Shebek's ancestors have been exiled to the moon, and they were exiled for causing an anarchist uprising because they did not agree with the politics of Uras, which is very similar to politics here. So very capitalist, very all based around consumerism and the individual and globalization and just money, gaining everything and wanting to get rich and powerful. And so Anaris, very much about community, mutual aid, whilst also wanting to support the individual and the individual's needs and desires in life. We meet Shebek at the start of his life, and there's almost a Bildungsroman aspect to it, because we do see him growing up. We learn about Anaris alongside him, and it turns out that this place, which was meant to be a utopia with all these ideals, is actually on a planet which is very arid and dusty and dry. And can you have a utopia where the land that it's grown from isn't conducive to good, healthy environments? Like, it's lacking in nature, it's lacking in like biodiversity, and so sometimes it can be a real struggle for the Anaresti to live. He's a physicist, and he wants to share his theories on time to everyone in the universe, not just the Anaresti. He wants to give it to everyone. He wants to share his findings, and some people on the council of Anaris don't really agree with that, and so he takes it upon himself to go to Uras to collaborate with some scientists there, because he has won a prize for his theories. And when he's there, he's kind of introduced to this world that's very different from his own, and he wants to learn from them, learn from their physics, learn from their culture, learn from their land, learn from their politics and everything, so that he can kind of repair the relationship between the two planets, but also share his findings so that everyone may benefit from them. And what he discovers is they don't want to do that. They basically just want to steal his theory and keep it for themselves. And I think with this book, it's very reminiscent of the time that it was written in. So it was written in the 70s, and Anaris is supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be very much like the anarchist communes that popped up in California in the 70s. And Aio, which is the capital of Uras, is very much meant to be like the rest of the United States. And then you have other areas within Uras and other planets which represent different areas here on Earth, different tensions, different wars that happened. And I think that Le Guin is wanting you to critique the politics that you're living through, but also if you're like a wild dreamer who really wants to replace it with something, like I certainly do, like of course I'd want to replace capitalism in a dream world, but you have to critique what you'd want to replace it with as well. Like, you must know what you want to be instead of that. So if we were to get rid of that, what would be there instead, and what potential problems could arise from that, and how would you work it out? Yeah, it was just, I didn't love the sci-fi aspect, but I can understand why it was written that way, and it did make a lot of sense. And honestly, I slogged through the first half. Like, I didn't really enjoy just kind of learning about the world. But as soon as it kind of got like stuck into like the politics and like the relationships and things, I did enjoy that. I would say that for someone who's considered a feminist writer, like, her treatment of female characters kind of sucked. They were very much on the margins, letting the men do the work, and the protagonist, who is, you know, kind of out there to make things right, he is a man, and his partner is more than happy to end up in a very heteronormative relationship, even though Anaris doesn't really conform to those ideas. And then his mother is seen as the kind of career woman who's very cold and shut off and forsakes her family for it. And yeah, then you have a woman on Uras who's basically a trophy wife. So I just felt like the treatment of women was a bit boring, and even the patriarchy infiltrates potential utopias, maybe. Yeah. Then I read another book that I did really like, because I read Strega, I kind of got it in my head that something that would be kind of similar to that in the same vein would be Picnic at Hanging Rock by Joan Lindsay, and not that similar, but also in a way kind of similar. So this follows a group of young girls who are at a school, Appleyard College for Young Women, and young ladies, and it is the height of summer, it's Valentine's Day, and so they go out for a picnic to the Hanging Rock, and they are told to stay at the foot of the rock, like to not go any further, and they're with a few teachers and a book that kind of spoke about the power of nature and how you don't, like, it kind of spoke to colonialism and how much you have to respect a land and respect people who know their land. This group of young girls who, you know, get kind of caught up in the excitement of summer and they want to explore the rock, and so they start to climb and then they go missing. There's a family that is picnicking nearby that has two young men there, one who is of the family, one who is an employee of the family, and they end up tangled up in the case. And it's very much how this trauma happens, where these young girls go missing, also one of the teachers goes missing, and how those kind of ripples or ribbons of trauma unspool into other people's lives and how far reaching and far moving they can be. It's like very gothic. It has that kind of like being a young girl, being a woman is haunting, and again, I really, really, really loved this one. There's like an image at one point that actually gave me goosebumps. It's when the girls first go up the rock and something comes over them, and it's almost like the power of nature has almost like possessed them and kind of entranced them to make them go further than they should go. And yeah, I was reading that in bed and I was like, ooh, scary. Very well done. And the way that it's written, Lindsay is like speaking to her reader whilst writing it, and I really, really enjoyed that because it's like a conversation that you're having with the book. Like the book is like, I know you're just learning about this tragedy that's happened, but you wouldn't believe how far reaching it was. And you know, it doesn't end there. And I kind of love that conversational feel. Yeah, it also says, whether Picnic at Hanging Rock is fact or fiction, my readers must decide for themselves. As the fateful picnic took place in the year 1900 and all the characters who appear in this book are long since dead, it hardly seems important. Love that. Like, Joan, you definitely took me for a ride. I was under your spell. I love this book so much. I can't wait to watch the film as well. Like, I know that the film is meant to be really beautiful, so I'm looking forward to that. That's all the books I have here. I read Boulder by Eva Baltasar and loved that as well. Read it in one afternoon. I read Permafrost last year and absolutely loved that too. I think I would still prefer Permafrost, but I did really love Boulder. It's a very good look at it's one-sided, so you have the protagonist, you are definitely seeing it through their eyes, falling for someone and how strong those feelings can be, and then when you come into a relationship, how they kind of ebb and flow and then kind of break down, and then you feel like when you get into a relationship, when you like really, really are like in that honeymoon phase when everything feels amazing, you kind of merge into one person at some points, and then as it goes on, you begin to see you're very distinctively different people, and sacrifices are made, compromises might be ignored, and you know, you do things for someone that you love because you love them, not necessarily because you want them, and how a dynamic of family life can change a relationship. And it was just a really good look at someone's experience in a relationship that was like a massive part of their life, and the sacrifices that come along with that, and the way that you change in a relationship, the way that you evolve and you grow just like the other person does, and maybe you don't go at the same speed or you don't go in the same direction. Yeah, it was really, really good. I don't really know what else to say about it other than like Permafrost and Boulder are two incredible books. Apparently they're part of a triptych, so I'm guessing the third one will be coming at some point soon. Don't quote me on that, I could be so wrong, but in my head I'm pretty sure I heard somewhere there's a triptych, so I'm just excited that there's a third one, and if not, I will be devastated. I wish I had my copy with me, because there was a quote that was kind of near the start about how the protagonist is a solitary person. She's a solitary woman, and she avoids crowds, and she avoids the crush of bodies. And I was like, wow, I really relate. Then I read The Tempest by Shakespeare, and I love Shakespeare's plays, I really do. The Tempest, like The Dispossessed, does explore the notion of utopia, but in a very different way. So in The Dispossessed, utopia comes about as challenging the powers that be and their politics, and how to make, you know, the world a better place, and how to be a stronger community. When it comes to The Tempest, utopia is explored very much in the sense of power and ownership, I would say. So to give you a brief synopsis of the play, I think it was written in like 1611, so not too long after European colonization began. So voyaging literature is very big at the time. You know, people going off in boats and discovering new lands and things. And The Tempest kind of takes from that. Aboard a ship we have a cast of Italians, and amongst them is the King of Naples and his son, the Duke of Milan, and a few other people. Their names, I got very confused when I was reading the play, I'm going to be honest. I think it's King Alonso, Ferdinand is his son. Yes, Ferdinand's his son. There's Sebastian, Antonio, Gonzalo, Stefano, and Trinculo, I think. Anyway, they're on this ship, and The Tempest opens with this massive storm, The Tempest. And we come to learn that they are on their way back to Naples from the king's daughter's wedding, and they end up being shipwrecked on an island. And it turns out that this is no mistake. On the island is Prospero, and he was the Duke of Milan until he was kind of cast out of Italy and left on this island for practicing magic, and it was a deception of his brother's making. So he has been on this island for a long time with his daughter Miranda, and as luck would have it, the ship that's carrying the king's son, his brother the Duke, and a few other people happen to kind of be nearby, and so he creates this tempest because he is magic and washes them up on the island. Now, to create this tempest, he uses the native spirits of the land to do his bidding. And when the Italians end up on the island, the cast is broken up into like 3 groups. So we have Miranda, Prospero, Ferdinand, and Ariel. Then you have the kind of main group of Italians, which is King Alonso and Gonzalo, Sebastian, and Antonio. And then you have the 3rd group, and that is Caliban, who already resided on the island, along with Stefano and Trinculo. So there's 3 groups. The last group I just mentioned, they're kind of used as like the comedic relief. And so the play kind of explores this idea of ownership. And this island is just referred to as the island. It has no name. It seems Mediterranean but Atlantean. It seems like a desert but also seems completely abundant with everything that you could need. And it's almost like this island could be anywhere. And Prospero, when he was cast out there, he just assumes leadership. He's just like, this is my island, and he takes Caliban to be his servant, and the way that he speaks to him is very demeaning, dehumanizing, and yeah, he kind of relegates him to being very much a secondary person to him. And he raises his daughter on this island, and you would think that that would have bonded them and they would be, you know, so close, and he would really value his daughter for the woman that she is. But the only woman in the play is completely reduced to her virginity and her purity, and is basically used as a bargaining tool. So by shipwrecking the king's son, and his brother who stole his dukedom, Prospero wants to use Miranda kind of like as this tool to win back his dukedom and get back to Italy. So Miranda and Ferdinand, they fall in love, and Prospero kind of uses this marriage as a way to reinstate himself with King Alonso, and it works. The play this is not my favorite of Shakespeare's. I did watch online a production by the Royal Shakespeare Company, and Jessie Buckley was playing Miranda, and she was brilliant, and I really enjoyed that, and it kind of brought out a lot of the humour instead of just reading it in the book. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's one of my favourite. I think it is kind of regarded as like his best play. I think it was his last play, or it's regarded as his last play, and I think a lot of original audiences saw it as this allegory for Shakespeare and his like masterful way with words and his masterful way with drama. But really, when I read it, and if anybody reads it after the advent of like post-colonial criticism, you can't really see it as anything other than these Europeans kind of like trying to own everything. Like at one point there is a speech by Gonzalo, who is kind of, I think he's like the king's right-hand man, and he's saying, oh, if I was king of the island, and then he goes off to list how there would be no work, no marriage, none of these things, not even a magistrate, but yet obviously he would still be king, because each of these men wants to be in control, they want to have the power, and you see that play out in lots of different ways. You see it with Prospero kind of like taking charge of the land and inserting himself over Caliban, inserting himself over the native spirits of the island. You see it him trading his daughter's hand in marriage to get back to Italy. You see it in his brother stealing his dukedom for him, and you see it in like people wanting to kill the king when they're on the island. And yeah, and then you have the trio who are like the comedic relief, which are Stefano, Caliban and Trinculo, and even they are trying to plot to come up against Prospero and win the island for themselves. And honestly, it's just boring. Yeah, it didn't really I didn't enjoy it as much as I enjoy some of his other plays. Okay, then I read another book that I was like, this could be my favorite for the year. So Strega's really up there, but so is Commonwealth by Anne Patchett. I fully picked up this book because Brandon Taylor tweeted about how it is the perfect novel, so I was like, okay, yes, I will pick it up. And then I read it and I was like, okay, this is the perfect novel. I have no idea how she managed to do so much in those pages. It is a family saga. It is incredible. There is so many timelines, so many perspectives, but it isn't messy. It's not difficult to follow. It flows so well, and I feel like if anybody else tried to do that, it would be at least double the size. Like it would be like 300 pages longer, but somehow her writing manages to capture everything without feeling like you're missing out on anything. We have it opens with a christening, and there is a stolen kiss at the christening, an affair, two families torn apart by it. And it very much spoke to me as someone who comes from a family that has divorces and remarriages, and being one of the children that's kind of stuck in the middle, and how families can fall apart at the seams and then they're tried to stitch up into other families, but they're kind of one big hybrid family, and how confusing that can be, and where your loyalties and allegiances lie, and you've got new siblings that aren't really your siblings. And yeah, it spoke a lot to that, and it made me think a lot about like chosen family and things as well, and how important that is, and how, you know, the nuclear family isn't the be-all and end-all of family, which we all know, but it's a very good look at how one incident can happen and how everything comes tumbling after that, and how it can go in many different ways, and how there's so many different perspectives to the one incident. Who knows what the real story is? Who knows what the right story is? Who has the right to tell the story? It's very interesting. You follow the lives of the parents, you follow the lives of the children as they grew up, how they all become very different people. Yeah, I would say that if you're in a reading slump, this book will get you out of it. Like, you can sink your teeth into that novel. It has everything you could want. There's so much drama without it being like over the top. There's a big cast of characters, but I felt very invested in every single one of them. That's so noisy. It manages to cover so much without becoming messy and difficult to follow. Brian Taylor was absolutely speaking the truth when he said it's a perfect novel. Then I did on audiobook, I did The Wife by Meg Wolitzer, and it was fine. I did, like, it was fine, it was enjoyable. I didn't love it. It didn't really leave me with any deep lasting impressions. It opens with the protagonist, the wife, deciding that she's going to leave her husband. They're on the way to Norway. Yeah, I think it's Norway. They're on the way to Norway from the States for her husband to receive this prestigious literary award. The book kind of goes back to the start of their relationship and how they got together. He was a professor, she was his student, they had an affair, they got together, their married life, their life as parents, their lives as writers. It just honestly just made me really sad. It didn't seem like a good marriage at all. It seemed like a woman who was taken advantage of in many ways, whilst her husband went on to be a very celebrated writer, and that just made me really pissed off. But yeah, it is well written. Again, somehow this book isn't massively long but still manages to contain 2 entire lives in it. Yeah, it was just fine for me. I think if you want a really good family drama, then Commonwealth is much better. Both of them contain writers, and it kind of looks at the subject of what they're writing about and who can write about what, but Commonwealth does it in a better way. Even though it is the main focus of the wife, Commonwealth still deals with that better, I would say. I then read The Body Artist because Ben loved it, and I have mixed feelings about this book. So when I think about it, I'm like, oh no, I really did like that. But when I was reading it, I don't think that's how I felt. I don't think that's how I felt in the moment I was reading it. I loved the idea. I love the idea. So we have a woman who loses her husband, and it's an exploration of grief. It's a portrait of someone who has lost their love, and they're trying to find their way through it. Beautiful idea. The best thing about that book is the opening scene. It kind of condenses into this one scene, which is having breakfast in the kitchen, the intimacy of a relationship. It really, really, really just gives you a fully rendered picture of how close and intimate a couple can be and how well you can know each other, and not just through what you're saying, but the way that you're moving, your little routines and stuff. In that opening scene, I still think about it. I think it's so well done. Also, this was my first Don DeLillo, and I've been wanting to read him for a while, but I didn't really know where to start. And then I watched the adaptation that Noah Baumbach did of White Noise, and I was so bowled over by the dialogue. I thought the dialogue was brilliant, and so I was like, if that's what his writing's like, I really want to read it. I couldn't find White Noise, but then I found The Body Artist, and I knew that Ben had loved it, so I was like, maybe this is my way in. And yeah, the dialogue was unlike anything else I'd ever read. It felt really lifelike. Just a very interesting style of writing, a very interesting exploration, especially of grief through the body. Again, I don't think I loved it. I think I just really loved the opening scene so much, and the fact that she's a body artist and she's feeling everything in her body and she's working with her body. That obviously appeals to me as a dancer. I love that. But yeah, that opening scene, yes, and then I think it kind of went downhill from there. And then the last book I read in May was A Devil Comes to Town by Paolo Maurensig, and that was for my book club as well. And it's a little novella, so it's not a chunky book or anything. It's very short, and there's something about a novella that I find really intriguing. So it's not got the expansion, it's not got the depth, it's not got the time and the space of a novel, but it's not so closed as a short story. It's kind of in the middle, which I find quite an intriguing, kind of playful, mysterious place to be, because you can explore something, but then it's almost like you don't have the time to go so fully into it that you have to trust your reader to like kind of like do it themselves as well. So this follows, is he a pastor? So the book follows a priest who has been relocated to a very small town. The town is in the Swiss mountains and it's very insular, and for some reason everybody there happens to be a writer. And surrounding the town, the foxes have rabies, and we move through from like summer to winter, and in summer the tourism is like at its height, and then when it comes to winter everything is like closed down. And when the priest is relocated there, he's kind of like finding his feet and things, and then he realizes that this new guy that's come to town, who is like this hotshot publisher who wants to set up an office in the town because there's so many writers there. The priest is like, you're the devil, like you're an iteration of the actual devil. And it's a very gothic tale. Everything seems to kind of go downhill when this publisher arrives, and the priest is there to see it all happen and want to put an end to it. And it kind of reminded me of Cursed Bread in the way that like a new person or new people come to town and then chaos ensues. There's violence on the streets. People are running after their desire and like very bitter towards those who might be doing better than them. It was like really atmospheric at the beginning, and I was like, oh, I'm getting into this atmosphere. I really like it. Like I feel like I can really picture the town, and like there's a kind of like a very foreboding tone that I found like really like it was like making me go on. I was like, oh, tell me more, what's happening? And then I felt like it tumbled to an end too quickly, but I guess it didn't have a lot of space to do what it was doing, and it still managed to handle it all. But I was also just kind of a bit disappointed that it was tied up with a bow at the end. And also, this is a story within a story. So what is being told to you, like the story that I've told you, someone is telling the reader, like, I heard this story. This is what this priest told me when I went to a conference. He's like sitting in this bar with the priest, and the priest is like, I'll tell you a story. And so we're being told the story of the story, which I thought was like a really interesting choice for such a short book. But I guess it kind of speaks to that that kind of like gothic folklorish feel that was throughout the book, like how things are passed down by mouth, and every time a story is told, like it becomes something a little bit different. And I think there's something in that as to who is telling the story, and like what version they're telling, and like what their motivation is or what their perspective might be. And yeah, because why was this priest relocated? Like that's explored within the story, and at first you think it's one thing, and then it's revealed that it might be something else. And I think there's like a really good use of unreliable narrator within this novella that I really enjoyed. Yeah, it felt like a parable. It felt like a folktale. I did enjoy that feel. Yeah, also interesting that what everyone was writing, all these writers in the town, they're not even writing fiction. They're literally writing about their own lives. So they're all memoirists. All these memoirists in one small little town, all these life writers writing about their own little lives in this small town, in this insular community. Like, that's really interesting. I would want to see how different the accounts would be of how they view each other and things. It just seems like a hotbed for gossip, and I love a gossip. So yeah, that's everything I read over April and May. There was a couple of very strong favorites in there and quite a few lukewarm reads, I would say. I'm really excited for my summer reading. Currently reading The Birthday Party by Laurent Mauvignier, and I'm loving it. So it's quite chunky, but it's very slow paced, very rambling, very tangential, and at the same time my heart is like pounding, because even though it's going at this like really slow pace, it's like a proper slow burn. There's like this pressure and this like foreboding and this like badness brewing underneath, and you can tell it's going to like burst at some point. And yeah, it's like so restrained, so restrained. I'm enjoying it very much. It's a very small hamlet where there's like, I think it's the 3 lone sisters, and there's 3 houses. 2 of them are occupied. One is occupied by Christine, who is a painter, and she lives by herself. And then the other house is occupied by a family, Patrice, Marion, and Ida, and it's father, husband, wife, mother, and daughter. And it's Marion's birthday coming up, and this takes place over like, I think it's like pretty much over one day, and it's, how many pages is it? Like almost 500 pages over one day. So yeah, there's a lot. There's a beautiful exposition at the start that like sets you up so you know where you are, you know who these people are. As Marion's birthday party is coming up in the evening, some strange men arrive in the countryside and insert themselves into the lives of Christine and Patrice and Ida, and I don't really know what's going to happen. I have my feelings, I have my suspicions. I think they know Marion, but I don't know how or why. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. It is a slow book, but the restraint that Maureen is showing is very, very impressive. Like, each chapter kind of focalizes on a different character, and it's very much stream of consciousness. You're kind of going along with them, and then it'll shift to another person and their perspective, but it's very tangential. There's long rambling sentences, but at the same time you're kind of caught up in it because you're like, okay, and then what, and what's going to happen, and I know what's happening right now elsewhere, and how are they dealing with it? And it's really well done. I can see it translating to screen really well, and I hate saying that when I'm reading a book, because it's a book and it's to be enjoyed as a book, but at the same time I'm like, this would make a great film. Like, this would make a really good psychological thriller. I have some things that I really want to read over summer. I think this is the 3rd summer in a row where I've told myself I will read East of Eden, but we all know by now that I should never plan what to read in advance, because I just don't work that way. It's fully whatever I'm in the mood for, whenever I'm in the mood for it. So I went to charity shop recently to look for books, and I picked up 2 classics. One of them is an absolute slab of a book. It's Middlemarch by George Eliot, and I think that I will not read that this summer. I think I kind of want to sit with this when it gets colder, you know, and the days are darker, and just kind of want to curl up with a book. I think that's what this is for. It's very long. There's a postcard in here with like a message on the back. That looks old. Dear Cornelius and Sandra, love, James. It has a lot on it. I will decipher that at some point. Oh, I love seeing things like that. I love when people write messages in books as well. I don't think there's a message in here. No. So yeah, I think I'll read that later in the year. But then I also picked up Summer by Edith Wharton, which has a lovely, I love both of these covers actually. But I feel like this is the timely read, you know, it is summer. I do like Edith Wharton. I read The Custom of the Country last year, and I thought it was really good. I think it could be a summer read for me. I mean, I feel like I have to read it in the summer if it's called summer. 17-year-old Charity Royal is desperate to escape life with her hard-drinking adoptive father. Their isolated village stifles her, and his behaviour increasingly disturbs her. When a young city architect visits for the summer, it offers Charity the chance to break free, but as they embark on an intense affair, will it bring her another kind of trap? Regarded by Edith Wharton as among her best novels, Summer caused a sensation in 1917 with its honest depiction of a young woman overturning the rules of her day and attempting to live life on her own terms. That sounds quite enjoyable. I could see that being me reading this book this summer. Like, I could recreate that, read this book. Yeah, why not? And that's pretty much all the book chat to catch you up on, I think, at the moment. I was thinking that I would like to make a video of like some recommended summer reads, like some books that I've read during summer and like loved them, or some books that just feel like sun drenched and very summery. So if you want me to do that, let me know, because I want to make more videos for you. I know I always say it, but like I do. Trying to be more disciplined. Will she manage? Who knows? That's everything I read over April and May. If you've had any recent reads that you have loved, as always, I would love to know. Or if you have any thoughts on any of the ones that I've just spoken about, like, please let me know. Let's discuss it in the comments. Let's chat books. And I will see you next time.